Welcome to Crime Update Files in London, UK. Updating the latest police incidents across your city. A drug dealer stopped in the street with bags of cocaine and bundles of cash in his pockets has been jailed. Martin Spencer was spotted in a car behaving suspiciously by police on patrol in Queen's Bower Road, Arnold, at around 7:1 p.m. on the 29th of October 2021. When the 31-year-old got out of the vehicle in nearby Mildenhall Crescent, officers stopped him and carried out a search. They found 11 bags of white powder, more than £500 in cash and 2 mobile phones. Spencer, of Morell Bank, Bestwood, pleaded guilty to being concerned in the supply of cocaine, possession of criminal property, and possession with intent to supply cocaine on the 8th of December 2022. He was jailed for 2 years and 8 months at Nottingham Crown Court on Thursday, May the 25th. Police Constable Zoe East, of Nottinghamshire Police, said, "This is another good example of why we carry out stop and searches when we spot suspicious behavior while on patrol." Detectives investigating a firearm discharge in Hackney are appealing for witnesses and anyone with footage to get in touch. An investigation was launched after police were called at 20:22 hours on Thursday, May the 25th, to reports that a firearm had been discharged into Garden Place. Hackney officers and London Ambulance Service attended and found a 15-year-old male suffering a gunshot injury. He was taken to hospital for treatment. His condition is not life-threatening. There have been no arrests and inquiries into the circumstances continue. Acting Detective Inspector Josh Rangel of the Met's Specialist Crime North said, "We know that when this incident happened there were members of the public and vehicles driving nearby. Our initial inquiries suggest the suspects responsible for the shooting were masked and traveling on e-bikes. Officers are keen to speak to anyone who witnessed the incident or who saw or heard anything suspicious around that time. It may have caused you to record the incident on your mobile phone. If so, officers would be interested in viewing this footage. Additionally, if you were driving in the area, did you record something on dashcam? Any piece of information could be crucial in piecing together what took place. Anyone with information is asked to call 101 or tweet at Metch giving the reference CAD 770325 May the 23rd. A wealth of evidence gathered by detectives has resulted in the conviction of 2 men for the death of Zubair Boudade in Northolt. Samuel Stewart, 36 of Lilliput Avenue, Northolt, and David Pilgrim, 33 of Vanbrugh Crescent, Northolt, were found guilty of manslaughter following a trial that concluded at Isleworth Crown Court on Thursday, May the 25th. An investigation was launched after the body of Zubair was found by firefighters who had been called to extinguish a fire in Bellevue Park in the early hours of the 13th of June 2020. Detectives established that the 28-year-old had been taken to the park and set alight after he was assaulted by Stewart and Pilgrim at Stewart's house in Lilliput Avenue 2 days earlier, on June the 11th. The pair were caught on CCTV at a petrol station at around 2:50 HIS on June the 13th, where Pilgrim was seen placing petrol into a container. They drove back to Stewart's address where, it is thought, they stripped Zubair of his clothing and placed him unconscious but still alive into the boot of the car. They drove to Bellevue Park where they carried him around 150 meters into a wooded area before setting him on fire. Both men claimed he was already dead when this took place. Despite there being no CCTV in the park itself, detectives were able to piece together what happened when they retrieved footage from near to the park, showing one of the men leaving and returning to the car. They linked the car to Pilgrim and found that the same vehicle had been left abandoned in a car park in Ashley Court. CCTV was also recovered showing Stewart withdrawing cash from an ATM after the incident, which provided officers with a clear image of his face. Detectives established the pair and the victim had been at Stewart's home on June the 11th. A witness reported seeing Stewart and Zubair arguing over a mobile phone. Later that day, Stewart and Pilgrim left the address, but there was no sign of Zubair. Later in the evening on June the 12th, Stewart and Pilgrim built and started a bonfire in the garden of the property. Police later retrieved items consistent with burnt clothing. As a result of detectives working around the clock, Stewart was identified and arrested at his home on June the 15th. He told officers, "You are not only doing me for this murder. Pilgrim was arrested on June the 17th. They were both later charged. Detective Inspector Marcus Jones, the senior investigation officer, said, "Our thoughts remain with Subair's family, who have had to listen to incredibly distressing information about how he lost his life. We can only imagine the terror he must have felt that day, and it is for that reason we are very pleased to see two dangerous men brought to justice." The pair will be sentenced at the same court on Friday, September the 28th. 3 officers were left with injuries on their arms and legs after attempting to arrest a suspect who had allegedly stolen a car and caused damage at a public house. After being alerted to an ongoing incident in Grove Street, Retford, shortly before 7:03 am. On Monday, May the 22nd, response cops were quick to get to the scene and attempted to defuse the situation. While trying to arrest a woman, 3 officers were injured and received injuries to their arms and legs while trying to restrain a suspect and place them inside of a police vehicle. A nearby car and window were also damaged. Josie Connor, aged 32, of Elksley, Retford, has since been charged with driving a motor vehicle taken without the owner's consent. 2 counts of criminal damage, 3 counts of assault by beating of an emergency worker, assault, and driving while disqualified. Connor appeared before magistrates in Nottingham on Thursday, May the 25th, and was remanded in custody. She is next due to appear on June the 1st. Sergeant Mark Walker of Nottinghamshire Police said, "When our officers respond to incidents, they shouldn't be left with bite marks, cuts and bruises. They don't put on a uniform to be assaulted, which is why we will always do all we can to arrest those responsible. This is an ongoing investigation, but I am pleased we've been able to put a suspect up before the courts in relation to the incident." A man has been found guilty of murder after forensic scientists found his DNA on a knife that was used to kill a man in Maida Vale. Antoine Rohrig, 22, of Lothrop Street, W10, was convicted on Friday, May the 26th, of the murder of Eltham, Mohammed Eltham, following a trial at Isleworth Crown Court. A second man, Thomas Tyrrell, 23, of Sherland Road, W9, previously pleaded guilty to possession of an offensive weapon. He was sentenced to 15 weeks imprisonment. Shortly after 22 hours on the 31st of October 2020, police were called to reports of a group of people fighting in Fernhead Road, W9. Officers attended along with the London Ambulance Service, and Eltham, known as Tom, was found with stab wounds. CPR was carried out at the scene, but sadly the 19-year-old could not be saved. A post-mortem examination carried out on the 2nd of November 2020 confirmed Eltham had been stabbed 10 times, including a fatal wound that pierced his heart. A murder investigation was launched and detectives from the Met's Specialist Crime Command began urgent inquiries to trace those responsible. They had established Eltham and Rohrig had been involved in a disagreement before the attack, and that Rohrig had spent part of the day attempting to find Eltham. Rohrig later tracked Eltham down to the landing of a block of flats in Fernhead Road, where he confronted him. Eltham pushed Rohrig and Rohrig left the landing before returning with a knife. He chased Eltham, caught up with him, and then stabbed him several times. Specialist officers searched the scene and found 4 weapons, including a samurai sword, a black-handled kitchen knife, a wooden-handled knife, and a cleaver. They were examined by forensic scientists, who found the victim's blood on the black-handled kitchen knife, along with DNA from both Rohrig and Tyrrell. Rohrig's fingerprint was also found on the cleaver. Detective Chief Inspector Neil Rawlinson, who led the investigation, said, "When Rohrig chased Eltham, there was no threat to him. Eltham was running away and Rohrig pursued him armed with a knife in what was an act of pure aggression." Rohrig was quickly identified and he was arrested by officers later the same night after attempting to flee by breaking into the home of a family who lived at the block of flats. Cannabis, scales, and cash were found during a search of his home. Tyrrell was part of the group that was on the landing. He was armed with a samurai sword, and his DNA was recovered from the weapon used by Rohrig to murder Eltham. While there was no evidence to suggest that Tyrrell had harmed the victim, he was part of the group fighting. DCI Rawlinson added, "It is sad and concerning that for so many young men, disagreements are met with extreme violence. While nothing can bring Eltham back to his family, I hope that the verdicts handed down bring them a sense that justice has been served. Our thoughts are with them today. Roerig will be sentenced on Friday, June the 23rd. The venue for this hearing has not yet been confirmed. Officers are appealing for information about the whereabouts of man who escaped from custody in South London. Kwame Richards escaped from a prison transport van outside Brixton Police Station at approximately 2 p.m. hours on Friday, May the 26th. The 42-year-old, who has links to Wandsworth, was wanted on recall to prison for breaching his license conditions after serving a sentence for burglary. He had been arrested by Met officers and was in the process of being transported to prison by a private security company when the incident occurred. He was pursued by a police officer who witnessed the incident into Brixton Underground Station. The officer was assaulted as he attempted to detain Richards, who then boarded a Victoria Line train. Richards should not be approached, and the public are asked to call 999 immediately if he is seen. If you have any information about his whereabouts, please call 101 or tweet at Metch quoting CAD 4140 26 May. Friday 26th May. A 42-year-old man from the Lisburn area was sentenced at Craigavon Crown Court for sexual activity with a child aged between 13 and 16 and inciting sexual activity with a child aged between 13 and 16. Michael Beattie has been sentenced to 4 years. He will serve 2 years in prison and 2 years on license. He will be placed on the sex offenders register indefinitely and will be subjected to a Sexual Offences Prevention Order SOPO for 7 years. Detective Constable Elaine Murray said Beattie took advantage of this young girl and manipulated her for his own sexual gratifications. We would like to acknowledge the courage this young girl has had to speak up and aid our investigation. If you have ever been subjected to any form of sexual abuse or are concerned about someone else, please contact 101 or 999 in cases of emergency. We care, we will listen, and we will act to keep you and others safe. Maybe now is a good time to hit the subscribe button. Friday, May the 26th, 3 men appeared at Manchester Crown Court where they were sentenced following an investigation by Greater Manchester Police Serious Organised Crime Group SOCG, which uncovered 23 kilos of cocaine and over £15 cash. Usman Yousuf was sentenced to 12 years in jail after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Mohammed Majid was sentenced to 9 years and 10 months in jail after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Azan Tariq was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in jail after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Unfortunately for the trio, their movement had been captured by Usman Yousuf's own CCTV cameras, incriminating them and giving police an insight into their criminal enterprise. On Friday, the 22nd of July 2022, at around 8 p.m., CCTV footage showed Usman Yousuf arriving home with a large, heavy, blue hold-all. An hour later, Mohammed Majid was seen arriving at the same address, leaving with the blue hold-all. Later that evening, he was seen dropping this bag at a shipping container in Rochdale. On Monday, the 25th of July 2022, officers executed a warrant at Yousuf's residence. In his car, officers discovered receipts showing large cash deposits and drugs paraphernalia consistent with a large-scale drug operation, including food bags and scales bearing residues identified as cocaine. Almost £15,000 cash and 9 large bags of cocaine were also seized from his car. The search of his house uncovered more cash hidden away and multiple phones. It was in Yousuf's house that officers were able to seize the CCTV footage. Later that evening, Majid was seen leaving his house with the blue hold-all and making his way to the shipping container. As he arrived home, officers arrested Majid and began a search of his address. They discovered multiple phones and SIM cards connecting him to this enterprise and over £500 hidden in a cushion. The next day, Tuesday the 26th of July 2022, officers executed a warrant at the shipping container that CCTV footage had caught the trio visiting. Inside, they found the large blue hold-all Usman Yousuf and Mohammed Majid had been seen carrying the night before. The bag contained 23 kilograms of cocaine valued at around £700,000. On Thursday, the 28th of July 2022, Officers attended Azan Tariq's house. He'd been spotted on Youssef's CCTV camera coming and going from the property with large, heavy carrier bags. A search of the property led police to discover multiple hidden mobile phones and clothing which matched the seized CCTV footage, placing him at Youssef's property on multiple occasions. A subsequent examination of their mobile phones detailed their conversations, movements, and drug supply across Rochdale. Detective Inspector Roger Smethurst of GMP Serious Organized Crime Group said, "Today's sentencings come as a result of months of hard work by detectives who launched an investigation as part of GMP's continued crackdown on drug supply in the region which blights our local communities. Drugs on the streets can have a huge effect on communities and are often a catalyst for serious crime due to drug disputes. And today's sentencings are another step forward in disrupting serious organized crime and removing dangerous individuals off our streets. As always, we would ask that anyone with information of drug supply in the community or anyone with concerns to please get in touch. Intelligence from members of the public continuously helps us with our ongoing investigations, no matter how small the information may seem. Anyone with information should report it online or by using our Live a Chat service." A violent sex offender has been jailed for 15 years. Following a GMP investigation into a 2-year campaign of abuse. James Scanlon of Sedberg Close, Sale was sentenced Friday the 26th of May 2023 at Minshall Street Crown Court, after being found guilty of offenses including rape, sexual assault and actual bodily harm. The jury was told that the abuse culminated in June 2022, when Scanlon held the victim against her will and subjected her to a serious and prolonged sex attack. Detective Constable Jacob Corrigan, of GMP's Trafford District, said, "Firstly, my thoughts are with the victim of this horrific incident. She has suffered tremendously at the hands of Scanlon. The victim will continue to receive support from specialist services and, owing to this, she has been able to begin the recovery process. Sexual violence will not be tolerated in our communities, and we will continue to support those who suffer." Officers in Tameside have uncovered 2 cannabis farms in separate derelict pubs this week and made an arrest. On Wednesday the 24th of May 2023, officers found around 200 plants inside the Bull's Head on Knoll Street, Stalybridge, after being alerted by a utility worker. No arrests have been made as the investigation continues. However, a 37-year-old man is in custody after being arrested on suspicion of cultivation of cannabis and abstraction of electricity after a second farm was found in 3 days. He remains in custody for questioning after officers found around another 200 plants in the former Woodman Inn on Oldham Road, Ashton today the 26th of May 2023. Sergeant Rob Fragat of GMP's Ashton Neighborhood Policing Team said plants and production equipment have been removed from both locations for further examination. GMP officers discovered the cannabis farm in the Woodman Inn after intelligence provided anonymously through Crime Stoppers. Thank you to those that have already liked and subscribed. Maybe this is a good time to hit the button below. We love making these videos for the community.